Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11. And of course we're playing this Germany this series, so let's continue this. Whoa, that's too fast. Okay, naval strike tactics have advanced. That is a good thing. And we're gonna end that. To 1938 on both of those, or 39, and then stopping for the moment. But let's move over to fighter pilot training. That particularly is an area that I think let's see. In relative skill level versus other places is really important. This is 6th. Okay, 6th. I know it's a horse vessel, but there's several horse vessels. The Luftwaffe was most assuredly a National Socialist organization. I'm going to leave it in it. Cool. Where other organizations weren't. Okay, yes, we want the Bank for International Settlement. That should push up our ICs a little bit. Tactical Air Command. Okay, and yes, and then we'll move that to your ground crew. And interception tactics. That is here. Okay, well we're at 39. Obviously it's 39, so it's time to research 39, but well, let's look at something like airborne assault tactics and see about improving that now that we can. Oh, and because of the bank thingy we got more. Well, radar training. Well, we don't have any of those ships. So let's see about submarine crew training. Argentina. Rare materials from Argentina. Okay, we can do rare materials from Argentina. We're now at 609. 609. Okay, we have to watch that. I'd really prefer not have to go down any further, but okay, 1940. We don't want to push ahead on that. Not now. Maybe some other time. I'd love to be able to do some of these, but you gotta have land battles fought. Well, reduction between times of attack is an important thing. Fighter pilot training events. So that happened fast. Must have had other advancements from other techs or from events or something. Okay, well, let's look over here at pilot training then. And that does have a little bonus as well from things. Give us more SS HQs. Yeah. Guessing that. Well, no, that's already here. Okay, we're using some of this here to control our recent Czech acquisitions. I want to get to Lift Division. I know, Rommel, you want to command. We'll get you the 7th Armor as soon as we can. Kill. Yeah, he looks alright. Finland, money for rare materials, okay. Don't plan on invading Finland, and one of them is our ally, so. Let's see, do we have any other of this forged vessel unit coming? No, okay, we only have the 4th. There's the 1st. Well, yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay, we'll deploy it. It sort of depends on what it is, and depends on some things, whether I like to deploy it. Aircraft obviously can move around a lot, so deploying it is generally a good thing. And what you can see here is, let's see, because of techs, it takes a while to upgrade to whatever the latest techs are, so it's sort of good to get those deployed. Now, some things that I strategically want to move, say like when we get some of this railroad artillery, I'll leave it undeployed because I don't know that I want to try to SR it all the way out, strategically redeploy it all the way out to Moscow, where once we're sort of at Moscow, I can just go drop it, you know, near the battle, combine it with some other divisions that are there, create a Fortress Buster division on the premises. So I'll sort of kind of do that. Cheating? I don't know. Definitely not the sort of intended way of using it. You only get to use it once, but you know, in that way, drop it right into the sector you may want to fight in. And we got engineer unit training, great. We then come over to bridging equipment. Yay, get across rivers. Claims on Memel. Yeah. Yes, we're gonna take that, even though we're getting up there. It's at 650, so right now we've got 41 ICs we can get without going over. Now, it's not 41 new ICs because as we had the hit from the beginning of the year, they will do things like drop in a heavy IC which modifies all these other ones, or other techs that will modify everything. You know, all the ones that are currently out there. But yeah, we will. Now, Memel, and Lithuania agrees. It really can't help but to agree. It is probably their primary port city, but even at this stage, sure, you have Poland here, but they realize the Soviet Union sitting over here, and without sort of German support, you could easily see it being overrun. But also, how do I put this? Other nations aren't pure, okay? It's not like evil fascists or evil Nazis and everybody else is good and nice. Because we can see here that Poland wanted this province. Czechsky Tetsin, or however you pronounce it. And there's probably a Polish versus a Czech name for this province. And this was a Polish minority that I don't know exactly how it got to be, you know, or maybe even a Polish majority in that province, how it got to be in part of Czechoslovakia. You know, Wilson had his 14 points, and I can't rattle them off to you, but one of the points was basically ethnic or national self-determination. Basically, theoretically, each province out here, and, you know, however you want to define that, could be, obviously, whether that's a geographical area or a cultural area, you know, or whatever, because these provinces, sometimes they don't have any relevance to actual political boundaries. It's just because we need a hex, in essence, this size, and which is, I think, is really cool, is that we can decide to attach it to 6-sided, you know, a hex, or we can do it to 5, or we can do it to, you know, 2, or we can, you know, it doesn't all have to line up to be the geometric hex. And of course, this all falls apart with, like, this province. You know, I'm trying to get here. This province. We need hexes. You know, I mean, or something here. But when we're talking about the European map, which does largely hold together here, and I think largely this European map is better than the Hearts of Iron 4 map. You know, we can talk about here or there. I counted once up this map's province count versus Hearts of Iron 4, and it's approximately half in Hearts of Iron 4. The numbers. And what we have to really see is, since this is both games, unlike 3, I mean, unlike 2, and I don't even know 1 at all, really. But unlike, you know, 2, which is a, you know, build big stack of armies, divisions stacked together. This is a divisional based game, both 3 and 4. Now we can do brigades, but this is a division. You know, how big of an area is a division going to hold functionally? And it's about this big. This is getting a little too big. And if you put all 3 of these here, that's way too big for a single division to effectively hold. You're now having to break it up into brigades to hold that, or theoretically run around, you know, move the division down here and then move the division up there. It's just too big for a division to hold. And like if you look at, which I'm learning to play more and more, War in the East, you can break up divisions into brigades, like you can here, and especially in regular Hearts of Iron. Well, I picked the wrong type of unit, didn't I? This is, you know, these come in. You have 3 of these in a division and a couple of support units, so that's definitely able to. Now the AI isn't going to, but definitely able to break up a division. So if you have a greater area and you need to hold the whole thing, you can break it up if you want. Now, why did they go to smaller? I don't know entirely. I can make some educated guesses, and that's all they are. One is the AI. I've got 6 divisions. Now, often you'll see this situation in Hearts of Iron 4 where, oh, they'll have 20 fully equipped divisions in the Netherlands. And not only was it not historically accurate, they didn't have the manpower, the supplies, the production, anything to have 20 divisions or something, you know. And so you have that problem. But the historical number of divisions. But it goes like, oh, I've got 5 divisions. How am I going, you know, the AIs, how am I going to spread these 5 divisions over this border? I think that's part of the thing. As opposed to going, oh, and now I do like the idea that, see this province here. In a way, it sucks. I don't know Zoala and what its political definition of a province. And it does sort of matter. We have sort of Cleve here and whatnot. But where's this river? And how does it affect combat? I like the idea that with Hearts of Iron 4, they really worked to make the map so you know which and where rivers affect things. So they very much try to, which sometimes maybe just fudging the graphics, you know, like for this province in Epildorn, move it to the, you know, sort of the border here, so that, you know, whether politically how it's carved up, it sort of cruises more towards the border. So you realize that if you're in this province and you're attacking this way, you're having to fight across the river. But if you're in this province and attacking in, you're not having to fight across the river. I like how they've done that. And so this, you could just sort of, you know, somehow sort of swoop the river a bit more here. And sometimes it gets a bit funky with, and you can see how some of the other people have broken up Paris, because Paris has a river running right through it. So you have East and West Paris, but it sort of snakes around, so can't always easily graphically do it, and things can be worked out. But so the AI can't figure out either, or the programmers of the AI can't figure out how to tell it to, oh, well, let's just stack our armies here in Amsterdam, all of our divisions, because defending anywhere else is stupid, because that's our main capital and capture point. Or they can't figure out, oh, well, let's put one division here, one division, you know, whatever province sort of, you know, would best defend here, one division here. Okay, that's 3 of the 4. We're just going to give up on our southern half of the country, so this province and this province for 5 divisions. We're going to put our 5 divisions and hold sort of our core Netherlands or something like that. It can't figure out a good defense strategy. I think that, and again, yeah, I'm in the beta, but they don't, well, I can't say, let's say something that's self-evident. They don't tell us everything they know and think and do. I mean, that just, however much they tell us, you know, they don't tell us everything they know and think to do. So this is just an educated guess. Part of it is also sheer number of provinces. They have done better on numbers of provinces once you get out into places like this and this. They're better. So they've shifted some of the provinces to other places, and there are some, I think, engine limitations. Now, of course, they're the controllers of the engine and have the ability to reprogram the engine. I don't know the difficulty of reprogramming the engine. I have absolutely no idea. I have had no conversations with anybody really on that kind of, you know, thing. So I think part of it is just shifting provinces, and we can also look, you know, deep into Russia here. Do you really need all these provinces? And coming, well, okay, they're getting sort of big out here. That's good, because you have this sort of Mercator, whatever, map projection that Russia ain't this big. It's big, but it ain't this big. You know, this is all actually, all these rivers actually come, you know, you can't see my fingers right now, but are all sort of much closer together up here, you know, because it comes towards the pole. So I don't like the way this is working. Let's move this over here. The border with other countries here, because it's closer to the equator and whatnot, maybe a more realistic size length of the Soviet border, but the geographic. So some of the stuff you can sort of do the big provinces, but then you sort of tell the computer that they're small provinces, even though they look big to us, the viewer. They're not these super big provinces in actual fact that Africa's are, that take forever to get across them, and that's, it sort of knows that they're big provinces. I don't quite understand all of that. I haven't gotten into map editing, but so it would think that they're smaller, and so you don't need all of these. And even down in here, do you really need all these? I don't know. You know, how often, you know, when is the Soviet Union going to surrender? But so I think it's the two, the AI and the sheer number of provinces. So that's sort of the limitation they're facing with that. So this map does is better now, I think. Now, is better make it, is that other map better because you have a better AI opponent? Maybe, but I don't think so. So get back to Memel and how borders were drawn up. Notice we've already clicked and claimed it, but Memel here was given to Lithuania, and sorry, I want to get back. Poland wanted its one of these ethnic people to be in its territory. Let's see my thoughts on this. I totally understand the idea of having a unified ethnic state. That's part of the idea of a nation. The nation and a state are two different things, just if you don't know. A nation is a national expression of a cultural grouping of people. A state is a government that governs a group of people. So you have, when you put the two words together, a nation state, they're together. I think a very good example of one nation, two states was West Germany, East Germany. They're all part of the German nation. We can argue whether German-speaking Austrians are part of the greater German nation. Obviously, Hitler and the Nazis were arguing that. But whether eventually, over time, the Austrians will develop a distinctly different culture. They may still speak a German language, but a different cultural national identity that's maybe in the Germanic grouping. You know, if we can look at the the old states of Bavaria or Prussia or whatever, and those are states. They're sovereign, but they're not nations. You know, they may have called themselves nation. You know, Bavaria may have called itself a nation at some point, but in at least modern political science jargon, it was not a nation. It was a state. So, a nation's, there's very good legitimacy, in my opinion, for the idea of a nation. Now, do all people of a language grouping and with similar cultural background should or deserve to be in the same state? I don't know that they do. You know, let's go back to the East and Western Germany. Let's say that you had in Eastern and Western Germany, without the Soviet Union occupying it, and without, if you will, NATO occupying Western Germany, and without any sort of border fences, and go, okay, everybody who wants to be communists goes to East Germany. Everybody who wants to be capitalist goes to West Germany. And as soon as you start to spout off anything communist in West Germany, we expel you to East Germany. And if you start to claim for any capitalistic reforms in East Germany, we expel you to West Germany. Okay, you know, so there's a reason that if you have people that are, and you may all get, I know Oktoberfest, but that's popping into mind as sort of a Southern German Bavarian thing. But let's say Oktoberfest or a bunch of other cultural, non-political organization or economic organization or whatever questions, but other sort of things that unite us. Hey, we're all together on, you know. Get back to the other day that I was talking about Eurosong entries. We just have one German Eurosong entry, you know, or some, you know. So you may share a culture, but you disagree over something. Now, you can also look at sort of north-south to some degree, not entirely, Protestant versus Catholic separation, or something else, and say, well, we want laws X, and some people would see it as a religious law. So I could see, you know, there are reasons to divide up a nation into different states. And then there comes back to the idea of, hey, this is this state's and nation's territory. We are not displeased or unhappy that people of different cultures live within our nation, but just the mere fact that people live in our nation and have our, you know, citizenship doesn't mean you get to claim our territory if they happen to be ethnically yours. You know, get back to this Polish situation. Just because the majority of people here are Polish speaking, and just happens because they wish to be part of Poland, doesn't necessarily mean that this territory should be your state, because it's part of Czechoslovakia. And what would be a good thing to look at would be, don't think we can see cores here, but would be Bohemia and Moravia, the way the Germans sort of left it as the protectorship. It is a as a defensible, practical, you know, unless you're going United States of Europe, and then you just have each little sort of province be a state, and it doesn't matter if they're defendable because they all have only one army. Unless you're going that way, you got to have a defendable sort of nation state. So that's, well, Czechia. So you get these mountains that, maybe better seen here. Mountains that sort of get to protect Czechia. That ring it and go, okay, yeah. But if you want to be living here and you happen to speak German, you don't get to be pro going to Germany. And if you are, we figure out that you want to be part of the German nation, we're kicking you out. And that's sort of what they did after World War II. If you don't know this, the Czechs basically forced all of the Sudeten Germans out of Czechoslovakia because they hadn't played well with the rest of Czechoslovakia last time, and they did not want another excuse for, well, however they envisioned it, another rise of Germany to come in and claim their territory. So you have the territory. You have that. So nations aren't all just good. Poland, I'm rather pleased right now with Poland that they are keeping out the flood of Muslim refugees. I am personally all in favor of helping refugees, and if Germany in a modern sense wants to help refugees, the best thing to do would be to set up camps near their country and funnel in money and supplies and help to them. But if they want to take in refugees, I would say that that's fine. That's a good thing. But unless they really mean them to become future citizens, and maybe they do, maybe the government does. I don't know if the German people want all these Syrian and claim to be Syrian, because a bunch of these people are just Middle Eastern peoples that have migrated up here. If they want those because they need more workers, and for some reason they think Syrians are going to be a good working class for the future of Deutschland, I don't know. I can't imagine why they would think so, but maybe their idea that all people are the same rhetoric. And as you know, I'm not talking about their race, I'm talking about their culture, and they're bringing their culture with them. They're not all the same, but unless you really intend them to be future citizens of your country, and I know this is a bad thing in Germany right now, is some sort of camps. Now, they could be nice multi-story apartment buildings with fences around them, and the people can go out on day passes and have a job if you want, but they're sort of accounted for, and they have, and they're controlled, and so they don't just get to disappear into greater Europe, and, you know, you don't let everybody out all the time, you know, at once, and you sort of control the people with the clear understanding to these people that once we consider the Syrian civil war over, you're going back. Now, of course, what happens when any side wins that Syrian civil war, they're going to be pissed at all these refugees. This is one thing I don't think Merkel and crew really understand. You got, what, 3-4 sides in the Syrian civil war. You got the Assadists, you know, people that are for Assad. He's not going to be pleased that these people ran out on him, though he may take them back. I don't know, especially since they're all young men, or mostly young men. You have the Turkish-backed originally, at least, though I don't know if they're continuing so, because Turkey is getting close to the Soviet, or the Russians, I should say, sorry, slipped there. Getting close to the Russians, and the Russians are close to Assad, so I don't quite know if they're still backing their sort of uprisers, but a lot of those people that are doing the uprising, they may take those people back, but a faction of the uprising element is ISIS. They're sort of the extreme, but if you look at some of the other factions that were uprising, most Western people wouldn't be terribly fond of them if they actually looked at them. And I know John McCain was out there and like, yeah, these freedom fighters. Yeah, they're freedom fighters for their version of Islam. Might not be ISIS Islam, but woe be an Alawite, woe be a Christian. You are not going to like their version of an Islamic Syria. And that's why sort of the new Islamicists, including the President Erdogan of Turkey, liked those guys, because they were trying to throw out the secularist Assad. And so these people that are fleeing into Germany and other places, are they going to be the right type of people for them? Then, of course, you have the ISIS faction, they're not going to like the people coming back from Germany. And of course, then the other sort of faction is I'm putting in the sort of Kurds and other sort of ethnic groups that are fighting in there. So, are this population that's I'm sort of focusing on Germany because they have the largest amount of them? Is it ever going to be quote unquote safe for them to go back? And so yeah, take care of refugees. I'm all good with that, but do so in a responsible manner. And there's multiple ways to do that. But then, if they all move to one part of Germany and all are Syrians, does Syria get to have that province of Germany? Because hey, well, let's go to Dusseldorf is now 80% Syrian, and they are all voting as Syrian town legislatures, and all that's all Syrian now because they all moved to Dusseldorf and legitimately just bought everything up. And sure, there's probably Germans still owning some of the land and buildings, but it's 80% Syrian. And oh well, we like Syria now again. We want to secede from Germany and join Syrian government. Yay! Does Syria get Dusseldorf because it's 80% Syrian? I think you see my point about this. Now Poland, so I'm sort of glad that Poland's keeping out a lot of the invaders. They may not be guys coming, but some of them have come in with machine guns. Unless you can buy machine guns, AK-47s in Paris, and they're not stealing them from French government arsenal, because French army and police don't use AK-47s. So the guys at the Bataclan and other shootings are carrying AK-47s didn't buy them in European gun shops. They're not to be had, to the best of my knowledge, in European gun shops. So they came in armed. Somehow they got arms into France. So the invasion of Europe is mostly unarmed, but there's some arms. But they're also, today I'm sort of pissed about their sort of oh, we had nothing to do with the Holocaust anti-Jewish laws, and I'm putting in anti-Jewish as part of it. Because anti-Semitism has been very strong in what is my computer now doing? Zooming in and out too much, I don't know. Anti-Semitism has historically been very strong in Poland. But Poland, obviously, his borders have shifted west. They are still sort of pissed at the British and others for giving too much territory to Russia. Well, I don't know. Where the borders today, now that they've done ethnic cleansing, a lot of the Germans, including a lot of these Germans, have moved west. Should they come back to East Prussia? And should Poland get these? I don't know. But back then, remember there was a country once basically called Poland-Lithuania. Lithuania-Poland. Sort of a joint hybrid thing. There is, and this is getting a long way around to this thing, that there is a latent fear that Poland may, either on a strategical level, we need to be big and powerful to fend off German and Soviet attacks, so we need more territory, more people, more factories to build guns, more soldiers to man divisions, and just more land and whatever. So Lithuania is in this hard place. Now, I believe, I don't know if there really was a port up here. I just quite honestly don't know. I sort of kind of believe that they've added a port here. I know Gdynia existed and was a real thing, very much so. But they've added, I think, the port here because what happens to if any Lithuanian navies if you give up Memel. But Memel was and this whole two-province section, but particularly Memel, was again a massively German majority city. Does that make it German? I know I have a very large German viewing audience here, especially for when I do a German series, and a lot of you are rather nationalistic, and that's all good. And if you believe, you Germans or anybody else believe that the majority of the people in a particular region get to define what country that territory belongs to, not what country they belong to. That's different, because they can always move to another country. If you believe in that democratic self-determination, well, if you let in enough Syrians and they congregate in an area enough, they get to claim that that's Syria now. And you got to go, oh, well, yep, that's Syria now. We thought we'd trick them into being Germans, but they decided to stay Syrians, and it gets to be Syria now. If you believe in that self-determination. If you don't believe in that self-determination of territory, that's a different thing. So if you don't believe in self-determination of territory, this is Lithuania, to give Lithuania a legitimately decent port, because you're creating a Baltic state, and you want to have a Baltic port, you know, a real port on a Baltic state. Another good thing would be this over here. Is this part of the nation of Ireland or the nation of United Kingdom? I have mixed feelings about this. I'll be quite honest with you. I am not an Irish Republican. I am just not an Irish Republican, and I've hated the IRA. I also hate the damn unionists. Those goddamn fucking unionists. And you may be one of them. Because you're Orangemen. I hate the Orangemen. And you can tell it in my voice. I fucking hate the Orangemen. But hey, they're good allies. Because see, I'm a Jacobite. The Orangemen slaughtered my people. So yeah, no, most of my ancestors are Scottish Jacobites, but so yeah, so because there's 3 colors to the Irish flag, and I take mine to be the middle one, the white color, Jacobite. Not the Republican, not the Orangeman, but we of the ancient group, the ancient monarchy. So yeah, so I'm torn on them, because I don't like the IRA. And I don't like the Orangemen. Oh, there's some nice, good, some are still in Ireland, some are up here that are good Anglo. Oh, and the Orangemen are mostly Scots, too. Yeah, I know that. But a good old, some often are Catholic, good old English, but, whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of emotion in all of this sort of Celtic fringe. You know, this is Celts versus Celts, because, again, most of the Orangemen are Scottish presbyter settlers that were put in here, yeah, by a Stuart monarch, reinforced by a later pseudo-Stuart monarch, William of Orange. That's why they're called Orangemen. And yeah, so what is this? Is this all part of Ireland United? You know, do the majority here get to rule? The majority here want to be part of Great Britain. The minority want to be part of Ireland. It only makes sense that this is one united isle. Yeah, I'm highly torn, as you can tell. But what are your principles? If your principles are, we vote, we decide, you don't like it, you know, the majority, get the hell out. And of course, in America, we believe in a constitution, or we used to believe in a constitution. Majority doesn't rule, the Constitution rules. So the majority may want to do something, but the minority has rights. And the minority doesn't just mean a gender minority or a skin color minority or even a ethnic minority. The minority means the minority has rights in the US. And at times in the past, it's been forgotten. Sometimes when they're in the majority in a particular region, you know, black people and some in, I think, most states, black people are a minority. I think it's like in Mississippi and a few other states. Now, you want to prove me wrong, fine. It's I just don't know the exact demographics. But in a lot of the states in the South, whites were the majority, but just barely. You know, it's like a 60-40. So, you know, 40%, you know, is black. And when under the Jim Crow's laws, that's 40% of your population being suppressed. I think Mississippi is majority black. I know you get to places like Virginia, it's a majority white. I'm pretty damn sure there. And I'm not sure. Florida, I know it's majority white or Hispanic. You know, so it varies. And Texas is also massively a majority white state. But down in the Deep South, some are majority black and some are majority white. So that sort of, but still, you know, we've forgotten the idea of minority rights at times in the U.S. So we're not perfect, not trying to say so, but we do have a constitution and it should be upheld. You know, so this is the trouble, and this is what we're seeing here of two good principles. And, you know, a majority deciding, and especially like in Danzig and in Memel, maybe a bit more so in Danzig, but in both of these, it was an overwhelming. It wasn't a 60-40, to the best of my knowledge, in both of these sort of city areas at the time. It wasn't like, oh, yeah, we get 55% of the votes, we get to determine it. No, it was like 90 to 10%. And see, that's when I would then, because see here, I think in Northern Ireland, it's sort of a 60-40 situation. Traditionally. Now, I don't know birth rates and what it is today in 2018 as I make this, but back in the 70s and 80s, I was very much alive and aware, and I've never been to Northern Ireland, but I've been around Britain, very much aware of the situation. It was the Protestants, even with all the terror bombings and even with the ability of the Protestants to move to other parts of Britain, the Protestants were in the majority in Northern Ireland. And so, you know, that's a split that's not huge, overwhelming, you know, as in like 80+%, generally speaking. And so, what do? You know, and this is a serious. I'm being serious about this. This is a serious dilemma, because I can go, yeah, Germany, the German people here now the great overwhelming of Germans here that hung out swastika flags, were they like Nazis? I don't think so. Not that they didn't know what Nazis generally were, they did, but they saw Nazism as New Germany, and they wanted to be part of New Germany. Whether if they could then go vote secretly for whatever political party, I'm sure a few of them would show up to be communists, and some would show up to be social democrats, and some would be sort of whatever the Liberal Party was, and whatever, you know, the old aristocratic parties, and you know, I'm sure it wouldn't be these huge votes that the Nazis claimed, and they sort of kind of did. So that's sort of my sort of majority rule versus statehood. Or nation, well, not nation state, but the state and territorial rights. And ultimately, okay, here's ultimately where it comes down to, and it has to. Like I say, I'm torn, and they're both good principles. Here is the primary determination of which of what any province, Danzig in 1936 and Danzig in 1939, or in Danzig in 1970, or Danzig in 2018. Here's the primary determination of what nation it is. Who has enough guns to hold the damn thing? Conquest. That is it, pure and simple. States, not nations, but states are geographical territories that are able to be held with guns to hold it. Yes, obviously we have nuclear missiles and tanks and whatever else, but you know what I mean. People with weapons willing to take it, and they're more willing to take and hold it than somebody with other weapons is willing and able to take it away from them. That is the primary determiner of state boundaries in the world. And of course, some of them are imposed, like modern German border is imposed from outside, because even to this day, there are, even Russia, they got nuclear missiles. In Germany, you don't. You know, you can, you know, Germany's rearming and uparming. In a conventional war, you might be able to hold your country from Putin. You just might be able to do that. If it was just like, you know, let's say Well, even an alliance with modern-day Poland. If you go, ready, set, go. War between Poland and Germany versus Putin. Who's going to hold what territories? With no nuclear weapons being used. You might be able to win that war. I think very likely you could. But if he gets to use nuclear weapons, you lose. Now, the determinator of whether he gets to use nuclear weapons are first America, then Britain, then France, because they have nuclear weapons, and they can retaliate. So Germany, the German state, and I know Merkel is sort of president and leader of Europe and wants to strut around as such because her economy is doing well and trying to determine it and pushing it generally with French support, though not with British support. We are Europe, we are this, and Merkel this, and Merkel that, and Merkel. You only exist because, and I could throw in we because we're adding in America, but Britain, France, and the US say you exist, say what your boundaries are, and that's it. That is where you get to exist, Germans. And I'm talking to you Germans that are watching this. We get to say, because we have the weapons, we say what your boundaries are. That's why North Korea has gotten nuclear weapons and is trying to get more nuclear weapons, because they don't want us to tell them what their boundary is. Iran is trying to, I also think for religious nut job reasons and wanting to take over the world. Oh, and yes, North Korea not just wants to keep itself away, but it wants to get nuclear weapons and go say, hey, U.S. all troops out of Korea because you're illegally occupying Korea, or we're going to nuke them and maybe nuke you. That's why trust me, the North Koreans aren't just going to get all of their nuclear weapons and then long run just sit back and, well, now we're not being attacked. No, the war is still officially on between North and South Korea, and the U.S. is still, and the rest of the United Nations that signed up for it are still officially on with North Korea. So the shooting can restart at any moment. There is no, from either side. Trump, under UN law, under UN resolution, whatever, I forget, Trump can start shooting tomorrow. He doesn't have to go to the UN to get permission, and it won't be in a war of an aggression, because it's still the war with North Korea that we just have a ceasefire on. That's all it is a ceasefire on it. And we can go back to it at any time, and they can go back to it at any time. That's the thing. They can go back to it at any time. That's what we're worried about. Iran, it wants to create the new Islamic whatever thingy and spread its rain out and maybe do other sorts of attacks if it's not allowed to do so. That's the problem with Iran. But, that's why Israel has nuclear weapons. Because they wanted to control their own fate, and they get to nuke any of their neighbors who are coming around them. South Africa had nuclear weapons and was controlling its own fate until it economically was collapsing, and it got rid of its nuclear weapons because, however much you want to hate the apartheid guys, they weren't insane enough to give nuclear weapons to the ANC, who are now threatening to kill all white people. And they're threatening to kill all white people now in South Africa, if you didn't know. And that's the ruling government is threatening to do that. They're passing laws to take all white land away from white ownership of land away from people. Yeah, and that we may decide to start killing white people. And they're saying that, but just not being reported in the news because, well, hey, they're just white people and it's black people doing it, so it's okay. I know this is a bit of a political rant here, but so that is the situation. Who gets what territory is determined by force of arms. And that's it. And you know what? If Germany started to build nuclear weapons, I would be scared shitless. Because I've talked to some of you really good people, and I know who you are, and I know who you guys are, because we've chatted back and forth at different times. And I think a lot of you are great, but sometimes with some of your nationalistic statements, I get a little worried. Who am I talking? Because I really don't know you. Who am I talking to? Am I just talking to a guy who's like, Germany's great and we should do great things for the world? Or is this just sort of a closeted, I'm hiding my swastika and not telling anybody? I really do worry about that. You know, don't, it's just your history. And, you know, I don't blame you, the modern German, for the people in the past. What they did in the past. I do not blame the modern German for what the people did in the past. But you have to still live with the legacy of the past. And, you know, if you're talking about kicking foreigners out, and that's foreigners, not Jews, not people that aren't foreigners that happen to live in your boundaries, but foreigners, okay, fine, yeah, you know, if you're going to send Syrians back to Syria or Libyans back to Libya, because a lot of them are coming into Italy, but then I'm sure they can get other places. And so, yeah, if you're talking about foreigners, now if they're born there, in America, you're born, you get to be there. But I don't know, you know, because, okay, let's say a Syrian refugee shows up now and has a baby in Germany. You know, if the parents are there under refugee status, in my mind, that doesn't mean they're a citizen. In my mind, I don't know what German law says. But in my mind, if the parents are there under refugee status, the child is a refugee too. Oh, but the child's never known it, you know, when it's 20 years old, never known its home country. Well, now's time to go back and know about your home country. You know, so if you're talking about removing foreigners, fine. You know, if you want to do that, that's okay. It's just German strong nationalism still scares me. And you know I'm not some sort of left-wing nut or all Germans are bad or any of that kind of stuff. You know that. But it's still, you know, and I sort of, again, if you're just being a strong nationalist, okay, I'm good with that. But see, I just don't know, and I think most of you who I talk to are really great people, you know, and if you want to comment to me, great. I really do think most of you who I talk with are really great people, and whatever, but because of my statements, if there's some sort of person, the Nazis were right or were sort of right or this or that or whatever, you're not going to tell me, because you know you're going to be socially banned, and if anybody starts spouting, whether they're German or not, starts spouting Nazi propaganda, you know Hitler was right or something. I know I've said it a couple times now, but if you start posting that on my forum there, you know, or below the thing, I'm going to delete those comments. And if you repeatedly do it, I will ban the user, because I'm not going to allow the spread of Nazi propaganda on my channel. You want to have a channel, you want to do it, you go do that. But on my channel, you don't get to spread that. So I do have you know, and a few of you, we've discussed things, and as long as we're just discussing history, that's good. I'm good with that. But if it starts to become something else, then I'm going to step in. But so yeah, it at times has scared me, and sorry, I forget which one of you said, and I think I'm almost quoting it directly, the Nazis stole our honor, and I loved that statement. And I don't necessarily know all of you the thinking, and I have a couple of different screen names in mind, but I'm not, it's just been a while, but I love that statement. The Nazis stole our honor, speaking of Germans. And that is just so right, and that is something that to gain it back, it's going to take more than just a few generations. True, you're not to blame for the past, but to regain German national honor, because it was so horrific what happened in multiple ways, including just horrific bombing of London or something. You know, it's not just, and you go, well, that's just fighting the war. True, but it was a war of aggression. It was a war that the British, yeah, they declared war on you because you invaded Poland. You, as in Germany under the National Socialists, invaded Poland. They did not start an aggressive war against you. So, and invading a Poland, even if it's over some sort of Danzig corridor, especially after what you the German nation did with you know, Bohemian Moravia, if you will, the non-German parts of Czechoslovakia, proved that it isn't, and we all know it isn't just the idea of reuniting some Germans with Germany. So Germany did horrific things, and still to this day you've lost your honor, and as a nation. I'm not talking about as an individual, but as a nation, you've lost your honor. And I know, and this is why, because Merkel, I know, is was born in East Germany, and Lutheran pastor father or something, and she is, a lot of her viewpoint, I do believe, is an attempt to, and of course she's rejected a lot of the communist stuff because she's the conservative party, but is an attempt to regain a humanitarian honor. Now, I think she's going about it in the wrong way. Again, if she were setting up very humane camps with no bad alternative motives, yes, I know Germans running camps for people, but ones that are voluntary entry. If you want to leave the camp and go to the border of Germany or go to the border of the EU at any day or moment you want to do that, you get to go out. You know, meaning these are only internal restriction camps. You want to leave Germany at any time, whether it's to a different refugee country, Netherlands wants to take you. Okay, you can leave at any a camp that you can leave at your own free will, may be escorted out of Germany. Otherwise it's like a day pass or whatever, and if you're not back in 24 hours or whatever, we'll put out alert for you and we'll find you and bring you back to the camp, and then we're suspend your leaving from the camp for a week, and if you do it again, you're not going to have rules and regulations for entering and leaving the camp. Sure, so if you were to do a truly humane refugee camps within Germany, and they could be literally apartment buildings, and you can make wonderful apartment buildings and house people from all over the world or whatever, great. I just, because of the open borders in Europe and because of the terrorist attacks, this is outside of any change of demography in Europe. I'm just talking about the terrorist attacks and whatever, controlling and stuff. Germany was doing it right, okay, but Germany needs to regain its honor, and it's going to take generations to do so. It's just going to take it. So, sorry to let you guys know that, and this may even mean unsubscribing from a few German viewers, but that's the way I see it. And yes, I'm fascinated by this period in history, and I hope most of you who are here share that fascination, but it's just some of the modern day problems. Okay, and so yeah, Memel as a Germans want to be part of Germany, great, and of course Germany had the force of arms to overrun Lithuania instantly, so yeah, of course they agreed, and we lose 5 in dissent, but we had no dissent, so. And that's sort of designed to happen right after, or very shortly after, Czechoslovakia. We're going to get into the last of that, but we got that way early, so that 5 in dissent would normally plow that right down real fast. Okay, light anti-aircraft armament on board ships of various types. Okay, we've got all of that, got that. Rocket artillery ammunition, yes. We want to do that. And medium armor designs, yay! Which, because, and it is grayed out, but allows us to come over now and finally do assault guns. Gotta get to a good enough design. To be able to do that. Assault guns are an interesting idea. I think mainly von Manstein's idea, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, their sort of design is all the armor up front, very low profile, very heavily armored, so that you can drive up to presumably straight on front of a bunker and blast it. And so even when it has anti-tank rounds or whatever, the armor will stop or deflect the rounds or do minimum amounts of damage, preferably none to the crew, and you blow up the bunkers. So in that sort of role, they work pretty well, and generally speaking, they're cheaper to build because you don't have to build all that internal elements of the turret. Cheaper and quicker to build, so they work well. So they do okay. Now, Germany tried to replace tanks. You tried to use them to replace tanks because they're cheaper and quicker to produce, but that it doesn't do so well. It's better than no vehicle, but there's other things. Okay. Ground attack. Okay. Just because I've experienced in the past, and particularly last Italian game, really trying to use my air power, which I often Well, quite honestly, if things are going well enough with Germany, I'm overrunning them with ground units. That air power is not unhelpful, but just unnecessary. So I'm sort of trying to do an experiment by getting some of these ground attack efficiencies and things high. Okay, yes. So, and seeing if that changes the situation. Okay, we have that other horse vessel squadron. There we go. Radar advanced. Great, 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 great. Electronics, stop. And of course it's opening up all of this. So we will, let's jump over to capital ships first. I think we have more of those and whatnot. Okay, the 46th Infantry Division. Got a lot of units right sort of there. No, Rommel, you can't have that division either. As I was saying in another video, Rommel at this time, I think, I don't know exactly the year date, but he was in charge of Hitler's army element of his bodyguard. He also had, the SS Leibstandarte, but Rommel got in charge of, was put in charge of the bodyguard. So he knew Hitler fairly well. I don't know that he, had lots of warm, cozy dinners alone with Hitler, but he definitely chatted with Hitler a bit. Now, at this point, Rommel has, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he got the job after. Pretty sure. After he released his book, Infantry Attacks, which, yes, I've read. I know a few of you already know that. Which is a very good book. Highly recommend it. So he gets, it's after this, so he's sort of famous, and it's especially if you're going to be or thinking about being a small, well, I guess even regular soldiers, but definitely small unit leaders should read that book. There is a lot of very, of course, Rommel makes himself look good in his own book. Everybody would. He missed some. I can't really pull up specific references, but some mistakes, and he definitely talks about Rommel at the start of World War I. Well, he was also wounded, but he had the inability to eat or keep food down, and it really sort of wrecked his body. And I think it's a reaction to going into combat. Whether it's comes under the modern PTSD or whatnot, but I'm talking serious problems of keeping any food down. And you read about, and of course he's making himself look good, but I think it's basically true. He was very charging into combat, but I think it was scaring him to hell. Scaring the hell out of him going into combat. But he was doing it. Bravery is being scared, but still going ahead and doing it. He gets over that, and obviously he was able to eat, or otherwise he would have died, just from the lack of nutrition. And so he talks about some of his personal flaws in the book, but he definitely makes himself look good. But you get a lot of good tactical principles on the small scale, and it's mostly all dealing with mountain warfare. So he very much is a mountain warfare guy, but and probably would have been given a mountain warfare division had he not gotten his chance to get next to Hitler and talk about panzer tactics and all that stuff. And basically it was a long sort of job interview to give me a panzer division, and he's given a panzer division at that time. And earlier on, when he's just a colonel or something, in charge of Hitler's bodyguard. Single engine airframe research. Okay, and there we go. That's grayed out. We're looking at radar design, so let's come back for cruisers, get everything been going there. So he's given a panzer division. And also Rommel spent some time, and again, because I don't know exactly States, in charge of the military liaison. Oh, come on. To the Hitler Youth, and he hates the Hitler Youth. He thinks they're making the boys out to be a bunch of thugs. I think maybe that be actually his actual word, but it's something like that. He uses. He thinks that they're just brutalizing the boys and making them to be thugs. Now he's seeing this in a, you know, he's seeing definitely their elements of their Nazi re-education of kids, but there's more than just that to it all. And so he's seeing this stuff that they're not creating. I don't know, little gentlemen would be my term. I don't know that he uses that term, but he hates the Hitler Youth and what the Hitler Youth is doing to Germany's boys, and that's because he's seeing it as the leading army liaison or whatever. And he's not objecting to the idea that the boys are getting some military training. It's that they're sort of even thuggish amongst themselves and sort of, you know, this sort of fight each other kind of thing, and to determine who's boss and other stuff that is going on in the Hitler Youth camps and things like that. And he just really despises what they're doing. And so this is all very interesting, that he knows what the Nazis are doing. Yeah, and obviously in 39 there's camps. He knows there's camps. Now in 39 they are detention camps for enemies of the state. In 39 most of the because I've recently been reading my book that I got on stormtroopers. When the stormtroopers ran the camps briefly, they were just brutalizing everybody. Or you know, some of them were just sadistic brutalization, just for sadistic brutalization. Once the SS got in control, their brutalization was directed towards particular people for particular reasons. That doesn't make it good or all right. You know, it's just what was going on. So everyone knew that there were camps, because that was not a secret. But not everyone knew what was going on in the camps. And I'm not saying Rommel knew what was going on in the camps, but they weren't anywhere near death camps at this point. They were, you know, camps for dangerous people. And the German people believed or trusted the Nazis to know who the dangerous people were. You know, and, you know, it's just like a big topic in the U.S. at, you know, this time when I'm making this is, you know, the mass shootings. You know, let's get political again. Why doesn't the U.S. media report about, within, I think, the last month or so, a mass stabbing of one person, went around, stabbed, and killed 17 people, I think it was? Well, that's the same number they did with a so-called assault weapon in Florida. But no, it doesn't make mass stabbings. Japan has many mass stabbings, not just, you know, the what, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, whatever, suicide forest that went and showed the dead body. There's a mass stabbing problem because they can't get guns in Japan readily, so they do mass stabbings. There's a bigger mass stabbing problem, and it isn't political. There's the Uyghurs and other sort of terrorists, but in schools there's mass stabbing problems in schools in China. The Chinese government is trying to cover up, but it's big, both to keep China from looking bad to foreigners, but also to keep parents from knowing just how bad the thing is. News makes it out mostly on the web briefly. People save the stuff, pass it around, but it's out there. But you can actually find advertisements for in China for a pole that's like, say, 8 feet, 10 feet long, that then has a U-shaped thing on the end of it that's slightly wider than a human body. And the idea with that pole is that you use that pole and the U-shaped thing to keep a knife wielder further away from you than he can hurt you. That's the defense mechanism. Think of this like a 6 to 10 foot long pole with a sort of, you know, a U-shaped thing on the end of it. Normally the actual tips of them are sort of rubberized. I've seen some photos of these things that, you know, so they stand around with these, you know, poles as guardian things. Oh, there's a mass attacker. So then you get them and, like, you pin them to the wall or pin them to the ground, so that even though they have blades, they can't theoretically can't cut or stab you. So they're having a huge mass stabbing problem in China, and more numbers of stabbings, incidents of more than one person getting stabbed, often children, in schools, than there are true numbers of mass school shootings. If you look at some of the propaganda on the school shootings, sometimes that's at night, on or adjacent to school grounds, and it's Chicago gangland, and neither of the people in the shooting had anything to do with the school. That's a school shooting. Well, but it happened at midnight, and it was Chicago gang people shooting at each other. Well, but that's a school shooting. Or they talked about arming teachers, and which just happened within a week or so of me making this video. There was a teacher who fired a gun in the classroom. Do we really want to arm these teachers with guns? Come to find out, this teacher was known to be mentally ill by the police. And he was allowed to be a teacher. Now, I understand privacy and everything else, but you're going to allow a mentally ill person to be a teacher. Now, I don't know if the police. I just don't know if the police knew that this person had a gun, and he was mentally ill. Because if you get adjudicated by a court to be mentally ill, they get to take away your guns in the United States, which is fine. I'm for that. If you go through the process. And so the police knew he was mentally ill. I don't know if they knew he had guns, but they knew he was in daily contact with children. But he's mentally ill. They knew it. Or whether if he's mentally ill and they get adjudicated, you're not allowed to buy a firearm, so they would know that. And he's also confessed to murdering his wife. So this shots fired in the classroom is because he's a nut job, and we let him in to be a teacher. Again, I don't know about the gun issue. Where, did he steal a gun from some relative or whatever, or did he go out and buy a gun? I don't know. But he's a mentally ill nut job that the police have admitted that they knew he was mentally ill before because of some. For the police to know you're mentally ill, there has to be a string of events. So you're pointing to that. Yeah. Well, they're just nut jobs. They need to be dealt with. And they're everywhere in the world, and they kill people. Okay, well, we're going to end the episode here. It's gone on long enough. I've gotten a little too political. Hopefully I've gotten that out of my system. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron with hopefully a little less modern politics and a little bit more history. Thanks so much for watching.